Chevre, how are you? I hope everyone is gesund, stark, und freilich, begashmis und beruchnis. Healthy, strong, and happy physically and spiritually. Everyone who needs a refuah shlema should be healed now, and Hashem should help that the magefa should stop immediately. Today I would like to continue discussing something we started speaking about yesterday. Yesterday we spoke about the idea of the Menorah and how in the Parsha it says that all the candles were facing the center and that it was made from one block, miksha achas. El pnei ha-menorah yeiru, and there was one block. And we explained how even though the 7 branches, there's individuality, which represents the idea of yichud, that you remain who you are, and you become refined, and you join, your personality becomes united with Hashem and channeled in the right direction. But there's something that comes before that, the basis, which is bittul, which is aware, and a consciousness and awareness of a higher power, a higher authority. And that's the foundation. Today I would like to explain it a bit more to be able to understood more clearly based upon what I was taught. But first, we'll start with the posek of the Rebbe's new kapitel, which is Shalom Rov Lo'ev Yisrasecho Ve'ein Lamai Michshael. There's much peace to those who love your Torah, and they have no obstacle. We say this every single day in the morning, before Aleinu, at the end of Shachris, and it says over there, Hashem Oiz La'meitein, that Hashem gave the Jews strength, and that is Torah. Torah is an agent of peace, and Talmidei Chacham Marbu Shalom Ba'olam, as we say in the end of Ein Kelikenu. So, the point is going to be a similar idea that what's peace? Peace means when two opposites could unite. Now, it's a very, very deep concept, and there's many, many levels. And Chassidus and the Rebbe's Torah in particular, there's you can write books on this. So we're going to leave it relatively simple without going to different levels. Okay? And this goes back to what we spoke about yesterday about the foundation, the center. The essence can unite opposites, and that's how we have peace, through the introduction of bringing a higher power. So, the source for this concept, one of the sources, is a verse that says, Cose Shalom Bimreimav, that Hashem makes peace in high places. And the Talmud says that, what does it mean, Cose Shalom Bimreimav, that Hashem makes peace in high places? That is Michal, the angel Michal is a Sashal Mayim, and the angel Gabriel is a Sashal Eish. One is a prince of water and one is a prince of fire, and they don't extinguish one another. So even though they're conflicting attributes, and even though they're seemingly separate entities, but nevertheless they don't extinguish one another. Why? And this is what Chassidus explains. When there's a revelation of the source of fire and the source of water, then it can bring about a unification of the fire and the water, that they do not contradict one another. So let's talk about it in practical terms. You have a king, and he has a chief prosecutor, and he has a chief defender. One represents chesed, kindness, one represents gvura. Now the question is, how do these two people, these officers, look at themselves? If their existence starts from themselves, so one is a contradiction to the other. The person who's the chief prosecutor looks at the defender as someone who's weak, someone who's a wussy, someone who, if we went in his ways, the whole country would go to waste. There would be corruption, there would be crime, be rampant. We'd abolish the police force. So that's how the chief prosecutor looks at the chief defender. The chief defender looks at the chief prosecutor. If we had the country just in his hands, there'd be no love, there'd be no warmth, there'd be no true cohesion in society. And that the person who's the chief prosecutor, he didn't have a loving mother. Therefore he's always angry. Therefore he's too judgmental, he's too critical. So they clash. It's a clash of personalities, it's a clash of temperament, it's a clash of disposition. But what happens if they look at each other and they think, why am I here? The only reason for my existence, the only justification for my existence is there's a king, and the king is running a country, And in order to have a successful, smooth operating country, you need to have a chief defender. But guess what? If he looks at it that way, that his existence doesn't begin from himself, his existence comes out of a greater good, then he thinks to himself, just like a smooth running country needs a chief defender, it also needs a chief prosecutor. And the same thing goes in the mind of the prosecutor. He looks at the chief defender depending on if his reason to exist is himself. Then he says, my temperament is a contradiction to that one, therefore we can't coexist. But if the reason for my existence is because there's a greater good, there's a greater cause, and that cause is the king, and that cause is the country, then just like I have a right to exist and I am needed, so too he is needed. And that's the meaning of Oise Sholem Bimreimov. The Melech, the king, could bring out the unification of both opposite agents, Michal and Gavriel. And the same thing is true in Avodas Hashem. Let's say we have the Yisachar and we have the Zvulun. We have the scholars and we have the supporters. We have those that are supporting Imen Kemach in Torah. If there's no flour, there's no Torah. If there's no dollars, you can't have a yeshiva. And then you have the actual people that are sitting and studying. So how do they view each other? How does Yisachar look at Zvulun? How does Zvulun look at Yisachar? So if each one's reason to exist is from themselves, in other words, they only look at themselves. So the scholar looks at the businessman and says, look at him, he's involved in a secular world. He's involved in a Gentile world. He's involved in a world of dollars and a cutthroat business, dog eat dog. How refined could he be? And he looks at himself as the scholar, as an academic who's smarter and more spiritual and more refined. And we are the ones, the teachers are the ones that are going to keep Judaism alive. That's for sure, because it's about the spirituality. That's the soul of Judaism. That's how he looks at the businessman, and he looks at himself as the one who's the main, prominent key to the survival of the Jewish nation. How does the businessman look at the scholar? What's the scholar doing all day? He's a loser. He's sitting and pressing a bench, sitting up in front of a book, so outdated, so old-fashioned, so naive. He wouldn't last 5 minutes in the real world. And it's only because money makes the world go round. Without money, we'd have to close the whole yeshiva. So he looks at the scholar as like a loser. All he's good for is to study a book, etc. I'm just giving an example, of course. So that's the question. But if they look at themselves and understand, there's Hashem, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and the Eibishter gave different mission for each person. Smach Zvulun b'tzisecha. Zvulun has to go out and run companies and raise funds and make sure that the Torah keeps on going. And without Zvulun, there can't be Yisachar, because Yisachar can't exist just on oxygen. You need funds to be able to continue Torah learning. On the other hand, and that's how Yisachar looks at Zvulun, that Imen Kemach in Torah, we need Zvulun. But Zebulon also gives respect to Yisachar. He says, obviously, it's the spirituality, it's the knowledge, it's the ideology, it's the wisdom that transcends time and space and guarantees the Jewish survival, the learning of the Torah. Money could be produced from a Gentile, from someone else, but Torah is what we produce, the Torah study, the education. So each one has an advantage, and you need both. Just like we said before about the king who needs a chief prosecutor and he needs a chief defender. It's the same thing over here. Only if Yisachar and Zvulun are imbued with the spirit of the king, the spirit of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, the spirit of the greater good, that for the greater good and for the greater cause, then we could unite. We're both equal, important, essential components to the survival of the Jewish nation. So we see again, Oisa Sholem Bimreimov, when you have the higher revelation, the higher power, then it can bring together the details. And so too is true concerning the Menorah. The reason why the 7 branches can unite is because there's a higher power, there's a higher authority, the center, Hashem. When each branch, each lamp understands that he comes out of a greater power and a greater force, then both he can be an individual, and even as an individual, he could unite with others. So this is also a lesson in unity. And we say in davening in Rosh Hashanah, V'yosu chula maguda echos When could we make an Aguda echos? When could we make one group, one successful association? When it's when all are united with a common cause, with a common good, and that is to do Hashem's will, a greater power. And the same thing is interesting, when it came to marriage, the Rebbe gave a blessing. And the blessing to every single young couple was, V'yivnu bayis b'Yisrael binyan adayad, you should have an eternal edifice, al pi yesodei ha'Torah v'hamitzvah, k'fi she'mu'orim b'moyer she'v'Torah, zui teres chassidus. You should build your home on the basis of Torah and mitzvahs as it's illuminated through chassidus. So I always thought, like, the Rebbe is talking, this bracha was the same nusach, the same words, to whether somebody was totally observant and was a chassid, a pious person for 25 years of his life to the T, or whether somebody was a totally unobservant person. They both got the same answer. The yivnu bayis b'Yisrael binyan adiyad. They should have an eternal edifice al pi yesodei ha'Torah v'hamitzvah, based upon the foundations of Torah and mitzvahs. So maybe you could say that this is not only a blessing, you should have the binyan adiyad, and your home should last forever, but this is also the best advice. When do you have a binyan adiyad? When will you have a lasting marriage? When it's imbued and based al pi yesodei ha'Torah v'hamitzvah. Because what's the main problem? When you have two individuals that are separate, so then each one's thinking, what's in it for me? Am I getting the better deal? Who's more of the giver? Who's more of the receiver? Or like the saying goes in English, who wears the pants? Who's the boss? But that's all if your entity, if your being starts from yourself. You look at yourself and what you bring to the table. You have so many qualities. You're Mr. Fantastic. Get out of my way. So when you look at yourself like that, then of course there's going to be problems with shalom. But if you look at it, no one wears the pants. You know who wears the pants? Hashem. He's the boss. In other words, we share a common goal, a sense of a higher purpose. Cause Shalom במרומיו. When you have a marriage which is based on Yesodi, Torah, והמצוות, Hashem is the boss, and you both agree on that. So then you will have an everlasting marriage, because you have the Yud, and the Gemara says the Yud of Ish and the K of Isha, both names of Hashem. You bring that into the marriage, that Hashem is the superior authority, then it can bring together two opposites, and you make it in such a way that you complement each other. So this is the message. You want to be a light of the Menorah and illuminate the world, so then be aware and be conscious of a higher power, and the more you will be aware, the more successful you'll be as a lamp and able to illuminate. There's a famous anecdote which I think applies to every one of us in all situations, and that is the famous, one of these light bulb jokes. How many psychiatrists does it take to change a light bulb? And the answer is only one, but only if the light bulb really wants to change. So every single one of us should look inside ourselves and make a resolution that we want to become better. And the more we introduce a higher authority and a higher consciousness, the easier it will be. Posting from my home, Be'ez Hashem Yisbarech, your man in Melbourne.